Our corporate governance program at the Lebanese Transparency Association was launched in 2002, where we set up the Lebanon Corporate Governance Task Force. And from the beginning, SAIP was our partner in launching this project. The objective of the project was to promote the understanding and the practice of corporate governance in Lebanon. Our advocacy strategy consisted, first of all, of identifying the issue. I think that was important. Second of all, identifying the people in the country who have already worked on this and with whom we could join efforts to push the cause forward. And from there, we were able to develop tools with the members of this task force, which brought the subject closer to home for the private sector. In a sense, it was no longer an article or a publication. It was a code with clear articles of what a company should be doing regarding corporate governance. The first objective was to raise awareness so that the business community in Lebanon could understand exactly what we meant by corporate governance. The way we went about this was to establish the Lebanon Corporate Governance Task Force in 2002, which included around 40 experts on the subject matter from different fields: accountants, lawyers, businessmen, academics, one or two public officials, and of course civil society activists as well. And we made sure that in the task force the heads of business associations were represented, so that from the beginning they were part of this process. The first project which was carried out was a survey on corporate governance in Lebanon to understand, first of all, how much understanding of it there is in the country, and secondly, how it would be received, how such projects would be, such activities identified by the task force would be received by the business community in Lebanon. The results of the survey were positive enough for us to move on more concrete projects, and such as developing the first Lebanese Code of Corporate Governance, and then moving on to develop a code for listed companies, a family reference guidebook on corporate governance for family-owned enterprises, and also recommendations to modernize the Lebanese Code of Commerce so that it becomes CG compliant. The tools which enabled us to get to this point were, first of all, the first Lebanese Code of Corporate Governance, which we developed in 2006. Following that code, following the launch of that code, it would have been very easy to just do one big conference and then put the book on the shelf and, in a sense, move on to another project. But it was very important for us to really reach out to the private sector in Lebanon. So every 3 months, or 4 times a year at a minimum, we would organize an awareness conference where we would invite 50 to 100 companies. And we would target different sectors. The way that we organized these conferences wasn't on our own. We organized it with members of the task force who they themselves were heads of business associations. In those conferences, we would first of all present the code and what is corporate governance and its benefits. And then we would go into how we could assist them in the process of applying these principles, moving beyond theory. The area where most of them have acted on, the companies which we have worked on, is mainly on improving their internal controls. So having an internal audit function, having job descriptions with job evaluations so that you can hold people responsible and accountable for the things that they're supposed to be doing in their job. The banking sector in Lebanon has been very proactive in this sense, and that's because they are closely monitored by the central bank through the Banking Control Commission. They have in a sense, been much more proactive in applying corporate governance than other sectors in the country. But interestingly, in the last 2 years, whereas banks had started earlier applying corporate governance, in the last 2 years we have seen companies begin to apply corporate governance, even to the extent of appointing independent board members, strengthening their internal controls. What has been most encouraging is to see the banks which have applied corporate governance prosper beyond our expectations. And I'm sure that it's not only for corporate governance, but corporate governance helps a great deal in that. And the companies which have applied this are also prospering. I think the reason they do this is to attract investment or to work or to begin operations outside the Lebanese market. You're changing the culture of the company, and culture takes time to change. I mean, if you try to put the word culture into a mathematical equation, you could come up with a formula such as culture is equal to process divided by time. You introduce new procedures, and with time, they become the new norm. And this has been our approach in Lebanon, is to acknowledge the fact that this is the vision we should have for our private sector if we want to attract investment, if we want to grow, if we want to create jobs, and if we want to ensure that family-owned enterprises, which constitute 95% of the companies in the country, are sustainable beyond 1 or 2 generations, then this is something that is important for the country. And of course, at the same time, it improves the governance or the perception of governance in Lebanon. We're fighting for a cause which no one can disagree with. However difficult it might be to push for such a cause of good governance and transparency in a country like Lebanon, it's a cause which no one disagrees with, even the slimiest politicians or the slimiest businessman. But above all, I think it's because it's been an inclusive effort, which not only within LTA itself do we have a great team, but that team has been cooperating with all the different stakeholders in a way that can ensure a certain level of success.